Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Problem With. We're in the section of the lies we tell, and I'm turning this a little bit later than usual because of all the personal stuff going on and a little time off with my family and myself. Um, and also to kind of process what's going on in this country for the past couple of days. So, we're in the section of the lies we tell. So here's where we're gonna start. I usually start lighter than this, maybe, but I'm not gonna waste some time anymore. So I just want to say this up front. If you're feeling overwhelmed, angry, scared, or just numb from the headlines, you're not alone. A lot of us are trying to make sense of what's happening right now. And this show is a space where we unpack the lies, the spin, the gaslighting, and try to find the truth in all the noise. So let's talk real quick about Los Angeles. If you've been paying attention, or if you've been, or even tried to, then you know things have escalated fast. What started as a peaceful protest against ICE raids and the illegal detention of migrant families has turned into something darker. As of last night, Donald Trump activated Marine units under the excuse of quote-unquote restoring order. And then the National Guard is already on the streets. And reports are floating in that military vehicles downtown, cell towers going dark, and the most chilling of all, no press allowed within a 6-block radius of protest zones. This isn't about safety, it's about his control, creating chaos to make himself look better. It's about creating an enemy out of anyone who dares to care. And if you follow authoritarian regimes before, and I don't use that word lightly, this is the playbook. 1. Create crisis. 2. Criminalize compassion. And then 3. Paint resistance as terrorism. And the worst part, we've been conditioned for this, slowly and systematically. We've been taught that empathy is weakness, that critical thinking is a threat, that facts, especially the uncomfortable ones, are the real enemy. Which brings us to another lie, one that's been simmering for years, poisoning school board meetings, doctor's office, group chats, and family dinners. A lie that costs lives, especially the lives of children. And this is what the episode is about today. And it's kind of not making as many headlines as, for righteous reasons. The LA protests and the escalation is very worrisome. But this one right here as well, it's kind of happening under the radar. And the lie is that the vaccines are dangerous. That somehow injecting your kid with a dead virus is a bigger threat than the disease that have literally wiped out generations of people in history. That the medical miracle that helped end polio and save millions of lives, somehow that became the villain. And it didn't happen overnight. It started slowly, quietly, with just one man chasing a spotlight. That man, his name is Andrew Wakefield. In 1998, this British doctor published a study linking the MMR vaccine, so measles, mumps, rubella, to autism. It sent shockwaves through the medical world. Parents panicked. The headlines exploded with this. The only problem? It was a total fraud. The study was based on just 12 kids. There was no control group. The data was rigged. And what's the worst part? Wakefield had been paid off by lawyers hoping to sue vaccine manufacturers. The paper was retracted, his medical license gone, but the damage was already done. And then came the celebrity machines. So we'll start with Jenny McCarthy. She's a daytime TV pseudoscience dressed up as a motherly intuition. Suddenly, personal anecdotes like "my kid changed after the shot" meant more than peer-reviewed science. And for every parent confused or scared or just looking for answers, there were 100 Facebook groups saying, "You're not crazy. Big Pharma is lying to you. You're just doing your own research." And the questions started rolling in. Should I inject my kid with poison to vaccinate? What if vaccines are a government plot? What are they not telling us? Meanwhile, disease we thought we beat decades ago started creeping back. In 2014, measles outbreak at Disneyland. 2014, so this is not new currently, but in 2019, over 80 children die in Samoa because vaccination rates dropped below 40%. And then 2020 and beyond, COVID vaccine resistance kills tens of thousands after vaccines became widely available. Not just thousands, guys, like we're in the millions here in the United States. And all the while, grifters cashed in, like detox kits, natural immunity guys, conspiracy for sale on YouTube. Politicians saw a gold mine of medical freedom, voted and voters and hope, and they hopped on board. Like Donald Trump, he wanted it to inject bleach. So we stopped seeing science as a public good and started treating it like just another opinion on the internet. Doctors who tried to speak out were threatened, doxxed, even fired. And public health officials were demonized. People showed up to their homes with guns. And kids, real kids, got sick and died. And some died. Not all of them died, but it's pretty bad. And not because we couldn't save them, but because we chose not to. So here's the lie. Vaccines are the enemy. And here's the truth. Fear is the enemy. Stupidity is the weapon. And we keep handing it out for free. And this didn't happen because science failed. It happened because we failed to defend science. Because we gave the loudest, most paranoid voices more airtime than the actual experts. Because we decided that quote-unquote parental rights meant letting your child and other people's children get sick and die from things we already knew how to prevent. And that brings us to full circle. Because the same entitlement that says, I don't have to vaccinate my kid is the same entitlement that says, I can silence protesters with Marines. It's not about safety. It's not about freedom. It's control. It always has been. And this is just the beginning. And now that we unpacked where the anti-vaccine movement came from, or where it got started, let's talk about where it went. Or rather, who saw dollar signs and made sure it never went away. Because yeah, some people believed the lie. Some people were just scared. But the others, they saw a market. They saw a terrified, confused, disillusioned public. And they jumped in to sell them snake oil wrapped in quote-unquote freedom. So let's start with the grifters. I'm talking about the people selling detox kits, anti-vax books, and quote-unquote natural immunity supplements that cost more than your rent. And you got YouTubers making six figures a year telling people how to cleanse their blood after a COVID shot. You got Instagram quote-unquote holistic health coaches building million-dollar empires by fear-mongering moms into throwing out their pediatricians and buying $90 herbal syrup instead. It's a whole industry now, and don't let the crystals fool you. These folks aren't clueless. They know what they're doing. They're selling mistrust. They're profiting off your panic. And then on the whole other level, you got the politicians. And let's be honest, the anti-vax movement became a political brand. And you know which, and it doesn't, in this one, it doesn't matter which side you're on. There's always the anti-vax on the left and the super anti-vax on the right. So this is a bipartisan issue. And then once COVID hit, being anti-vaccine wasn't just about medicine anymore. It was about identity. It became a purity test, especially for far-right candidates. It was a badge of honor. Refuse the jab, you're a patriot. Wear a mask, you're a sheep. Believe in public health, you're part of the deep state. So let's enter the people like Ron DeSantis, and you've probably heard his name countless of times in this show. For rightful reasons. He turned vaccine skepticism into a political capital. He passed laws banning vaccine requirements, even for private businesses. And he appointed conspiracy theorists to lead public health panels. And he sold it as quote-unquote freedom, while his own state hospitals filled up with kids that were dying. And so now let's look at currently RFK Jr. He branded himself as the truth-telling underdog fighting Big Pharma, while pushing decade-old lies and getting rich doing it. He's the founder of Children's Health Defense, which sounds lovely, right? Like something that gives out juice boxes and helmets. Nah, it's an anti-vaccine lobbying group raking in millions in donations while spreading disinformation worldwide. And don't get me started on Steve Bannon's podcast or all those right-wing think tanks suddenly obsessed with bodily autonomy, but only when it comes to vaccines. So it's funny how freedom never seems to apply to women's bodies or queer kids just trying to exist. So you see the pattern here? Like, it was never about health. It was about leverage. Leverage for power, leverage for profit, leverage for the control. And here's where it circles back to what we're seeing in Los Angeles. Because the same playbook that turns vaccines into political theater is the same one being used right now to crush dissent, create panic, blame the other side, step in like a savior. And while we're fighting each other over masks or mandates, they're signing contracts, buying tear gas, and building a surveillance state in plain sight. And look who's benefiting from the crackdown in LA. We have defense contractors, private security firms, police unions with bloated budgets, and politicians running for office on quote-unquote law and order. So you really think that they want peace? Again, peace doesn't sell riot gear. Peace doesn't justify tanks in the street. Peace doesn't get you re-elected when your only campaign promise is I'll be tougher than the last guy, or law and order and all that. In the same logic, different battlefield. In both cases, the chaos is the point. If people are scared, they'll buy anything, whether it's vitamin D, supplements, or a militarized response to a protest. If people are divided, they won't organize. And if people are drowning in disinformation, then truth becomes just another opinion. And that is the most dangerous place a democracy can live. And so next time someone tells you, I just don't trust vaccines, ask them, who do they trust? And who's making off that trust? Who's making money off that trust? Because chances are, it's someone who wouldn't know a peer-reviewed study from a pizza menu. Oh, but they do know how to sell fear, and that's what they're doing every single day. And we talked so far like how this lie started and who's making money off of it, and we still let the lie continue, and it's growing every single day. Now that we have a confirm, and not just a confirm, he's an advocate for conspiracy theories, and anti-vaxxer as a head of or director of Health and Human Services. Like, this cannot be more dystopian as it is right now. It's getting crazy out here when we have a guy who just recently went with his grandkids to a river that was polluted and it was dangerous for the public, and he just dunked his head and put those children in danger. That should be impeachable or removed as director of Health and Human Services. But he's still there because it's a political tool. So let's start with that. It's like, and he's making money at it. So let's talk about what is actually costing us, the people. Not in theory, not in some hypothetical. I'm talking about the real world consequences. Real kids, real deaths, real communities getting hit the hardest again and again because we let fear win, and we call it freedom. Let's start with something that should be basic. Herd immunity. And you probably heard this. Probably heard a different version of it. This is the version of it. It's the facts. This is the idea that when enough people in a population are vaccinated, quote unquote, not quote unquote, sorry, highlighted. People are vaccinated. It protects those who can't, like babies, cancer patients, they immunocompromised. And that's a hard word sometimes, guys. It took me a little bit to practice it. It's one of the most powerful tools public health has, but you need about 90 to 95% coverage for this to work. And thanks to vaccine refusal, the anti-vax movement, we're slipping below that line in more and more states. Let's start with Texas, for example. In some counties, over 10% of the kids in public schools are now unvaccinated. Not because they can't be, but because their parents filled the so-called religious exemptions. So you need 90 to 95% and over for herd immunity. Now we have over 10% of just children not vaccinated. So we're way below the 90%. And so let's go with Idaho. It's even worse. And what is happening? Measles outbreaks in schools, whooping cough spreading through daycares, kids being sent home, parents suing school districts, and children dying from diseases that we already beat, and this should be history. And we have the tools to prevent it. So let me say that again. Kids are dying from illnesses that should be history by now. And they were eradicated, but we're bringing them out. In 2019, Samoa lost over 80 children to measles after misinformation campaigns tanked their vaccination rates. In California, that Disneyland measles outbreak in 2014 infected dozens, many of them babies too young to get the shot. And during COVID, tens of thousands of people die after vaccines were available. They die after the vaccine was available, not because of the vaccine. So don't get it twisted. It is not because the science failed. It's because the messaging failed and the public trust had already been gutted by years of anti-vax garbage. Now here's the part that really burns me. A lot of pushback against vaccine today gets cloaked in this idea of quote-unquote religious freedom. You've heard it. My faith doesn't believe in vaccines. God will protect me, not science. I have the right to refuse because it's part of my religion. So let's talk about that. Because I went to a Catholic school. In private Catholic school, you had to have all your vaccines to be able to go. So a little hypocritical already. And I grew up around faith. I know what scripture says. And you know what it doesn't say? It doesn't say ignore the sick. It doesn't say reject healing. I'm sure as hell doesn't say let children die to make a point about liberty. Jesus didn't walk around selling detox kits or ranting about mRNA. He healed the sick for free. He welcomed outcasts, protected children. He literally said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick." Now, if you want to know, Mark chapter 2, verse 17 for those keeping score. So don't hide behind a Bible while you spread fear. Don't tell me you're pro-life while you refuse to take a shot that protects someone else's baby from dying in the NICU. That's not faith. That's ego. That's some stupid crap that you're doing. And that's self-righteousness pretending to be religion. If your quote-unquote religious freedom puts other people in danger, then it's not freedom. It's a shield for selfishness. And too many politicians have been all too happy to hand that shield out like candy, as long as it gets them a few more votes. But here's what it really means. It means school nurses are getting screamed at for enforcing vaccine laws. It means pediatricians are quitting because of threats and harassment. It means entire communities, especially Black, brown, and poor communities, being left exposed to outbreaks while rich suburban moms brags about natural immunity in their Facebook echo chambers. And once again, who suffers the most? It's not the grifters on YouTube. Not the senator who got their shots in secret while telling you not to, or a current president, remember? Trump got his shots. It's the families who lost a child. It's the cancer patient who can't get treatment because the hospitals are overwhelmed. It's the teacher who got COVID for the third time because half their students come from homes that think vaccines are quote unquote mind control. I have experienced that so many times in my teaching experiences. So many of my students, so many that I know had this religious freedom exception. Yeah, put a lot of us in danger. And this is what we allowed to happen because we treated science like politics. We let fear win. We let ignorance walk in the front doors and call itself freedom. And now we're paying the price in blood, in funerals, in preventable suffering. And if we don't stop this now, if we don't start standing up for truth, for evidence, for actual compassion, then it's not just our health risk, it's our humanity. And the other part that's like crazy when they say about religious freedom, the part that gets me is that they say it's God's plan, but again, why would Jesus go to the sick and heal them? A sick, any person with measles or leprosy, anything, and heal them. But because according to the religious nuts, that person who had Jesus should have not been healing them, because God's plan was for this man to have leprosy and die. So where is this? And he, like I mentioned, he said the doctors are for the sick. So this thing of religious freedom, guys, is ridiculous. Like, you're letting kids die on purpose, and that is a shame. If you guys remember, let's keep in score as well, in Texas, remember this couple whose forgot how old the kid was, like 4 years old? He was the boy, I forgot, it was this their kid died of measles because they weren't vaccinated, because the family believed that it was anti-vax and they didn't believe in all that stuff, the conspiracy. And when interviewed, they said, well, it's too bad they die. I'm paraphrasing, by the way. It's like, it's too bad. I'm so sad that they die, but I will not change anything. I will never give them the vaccine, because that's God's plan, apparently. So here's where we are. This is how dangerous. You let your own kids, your own flesh and blood, die because of conspiracy theories. And that's this word that I keep hearing, not just as lately, but way like 2016, 2020, even before that, even before the 2020 or 2016 elections and all that stuff. The word I keep hearing all the time is freedom. In every press conference, every protest sign, every angry social media comment under a CDC post, freedom from mandates, freedom of choice, freedom to do my own research. And listen, I get it. I love freedom too. I serve in the Marine Corps. I've been in countries where people don't get to speak out or go to school or even practice their religion without fear. But somewhere along the line, we twisted the idea of freedom into something very ugly, into something very selfish, into something that excuses cruelty, ignorance, and straight up negligence, as long as it makes us feel powerful. The anti-vax movement loves to talk about quote-unquote medical freedom. But what they don't talk about is whose freedom gets taken away when they refuse to protect their communities. What about the kid with leukemia who can't go to school because the classmates' parents don't believe in shots? What about the single mom working 2 jobs who can't afford to stay home with a sick kid because half of the daycare doesn't vaccinate? What about teachers, nurses, cancer patients, newborns, all of whom rely on the rest of us not to treat public health like a personal opinion? Like, you want freedom? Fine, but your freedom stops where someone else's life begins. And it's not just about health. This warped idea of freedom is being used to attack everything that makes society work. We've seen it before. I don't want my taxes funded public schools. I don't want regulations on my business. I don't trust governments. So I'll homeschool, self-medicate, and ignore climate warnings. And now, it's become, I don't trust vaccines, so I'm opting out of public responsibility altogether. But that's not how society works. That's not how freedom works. Freedom without accountability, that's just anarchy. And usually, it's only the privileged who get to survive that kind of chaos. Have you guys watched any other movies that talk about that? Let's do the simplest example. Hey, remember The Dark Knight Rises? The third Batman movie? When Gotham became an anarchy, but the only people who were protected were the bad guys? You see this pattern, right? Not the poor, not the ones trying, and we all cheer for the police saying to protect the justice. To get laws back in order. We cheer for a vigilante who was trying to get this anarchy out of the system. Like, come on. And so like, let me get back on track. Because let's be honest, when rich folks refuse to vaccinate their kids, they still have access to private tutors, like boutique clinics and emergency care. Do you think these people don't go to their own doctors? Come on. When they get sick, they get helicoptered to private hospitals. When we get sick, we wait 6 hours in the ER behind a line of preventable cases. So when someone says, I just want the freedom to choose, when they're really saying is, I want the freedom to choose for me, and I don't care what it costs you. This is exactly what's happening in Los Angeles right now too. Again, this all circles back to that. It's like Trump isn't sending in the Marines because people are violent. He's sending them because people are organizing, because people are standing up for each other, because people are refusing to be silent in the face of injustice. And that scares him. He's a coward. Because the true freedom doesn't come from tanks or tweets or turning your back on public health. It comes from solidarity, from people looking out for each other, from knowing that your rights end where someone else's safety begins, and being okay with that. We've let fear convince us that science is a trap, that compassion is weakness, that the government's always lying, and that the YouTube guy with a ring light is telling the truth. Kind of funny coming from me as a podcaster, but I'm just trying to, I'm trying to spread not the misinformation. I'm just trying to give you the information of what's going on. And so that's not freedom. That's paranoia dressed up like patriotism. And the more we fall for it, the more we lose the real freedoms, like the freedom to go to school without getting measles, the freedom to protest without being tear gassed by Marines and National Guard and police, or the freedom to trust our doctors, our teachers, our neighbors, or the freedom to live in a country that doesn't treat ignorance like it's sacred. So next time someone tells you they're just fighting for freedom, ask them this: freedom for who, at what cost, and who's cashing the check? So let's get real. Because at some point, we have to stop dancing around the truth. People are dying, not because we don't have the science, not because we don't have the medicine, but because we let fear, politics, and conspiracy theories take the wheel, and then have the nerve to call that freedom. We let, quote unquote, freedom become the most misused word in American politics. It doesn't mean what they think it means. Because here's the deal. You can't scream about the Constitution and ignore the parts that says we're all entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How am I supposed to, or how are you supposed to pursue happiness when you are in the ICU? How does liberty work when your kid's school has measles outbreak? Where's the freedom for the child who can't breathe because someone else thought essential oils were better than a vaccine? Where's the pursuit of anything when you're 6 feet under? You can't have freedom when people are dead. That's not freedom, and that's failure. And yeah, I'm mad because I served this country, because I stood up for what I thought were American values. And now I'm watching those same values get twisted into something cruel and cowardly. And here's the funny part. The same people who I probably served with are becoming the biggest anti-vaxxers I have ever met in my life. And that's hilarious coming from them. Because when you're in the military, guess what you have to do? You gotta as soon as you get for boot camp, guess what you get? Shots. All the shots. And every 2 weeks, I remember, every Sunday, I think it was every Sunday. No. Once a while, if you had to get a penicillin shot, or also known as the peanut butter shot. If you serve in the Marine Corps or any in the military, do you understand what I mean by that? So this idea that vaccine, like fellow military members are saying, oh well, I don't trust vaccines. You idiot! You served, and you get all the vaccines and all the benefits, and you have been the healthiest you've been in your life. Again, I'm just saying, I love this country. That's why I refuse to lie about what's becoming. Because loving something doesn't mean pretending it's perfect. It means fighting to make it better. And if your version of America only protects the loudest, richest, whitest, or most paranoid voices, then we're not fighting for the same thing. This anti-vax movement is not about personal choice. It's about the erosion of collective responsibility. It's about the normalization of selfishness. It's about replacing truth with vibes and calling it patriotism. And what's happening in Los Angeles right now is no different. It's the same disease, just in a different form. It's what happens when fear is monetized, weaponized, and institutionalized. We let people die. We let them get rich doing it, and then we let them legislate off those lies. And now people are dying, children are dying, and the government at the highest levels are siding with the liars. And before anybody tries to clip this and try to make it like saying that the Democrats are the liars, no. The GOP are the ones spreading the misinformation of vaccines. At the same time, those same politicians who the GOP have their whole families and themselves have themselves vaccinated. So here's what I need you to take away from this episode. If someone tells you that you're not doing their, sorry, I'm trying to figure. If someone tells you that they're just doing their own research, ask them if their research includes funeral statistics. It's cruel, but it's true. If someone says it's about medical freedom, ask them who loses freedom when herd immunity collapses. If someone starts quoting the Constitution, ask them if they believe everyone is entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or just the people who agree with them. Because this isn't just about vaccines. It's about whether we're going to keep pretending that selfishness is a right and that compassion is optional. It's about whether we're going to keep handing out the steering wheel to this country to people who think they're brave for rejecting a life-saving shot while calling Marines some peaceful protesters.
Hey, Zay, hurry up.
And this moment we're in it's not just a public health crisis. It's a moral one. And it's a long past time we picked a side. I hope you picked the right side, which is the one for science and for morals and care for your neighbors. Again, when people say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that it mean when the founding fathers said that, they wanted to make sure the community was able to be healthy and not burdened with poverty, to be able to sustain a society that we can be the better option of everybody. But right now, the politicians are saying, "Oh, it's okay if you die." Because I don't think vaccines are a thing. I think this is stupid. And then to go backwards and go wink, wink, wink. I'm getting vaccines anyways. Again, this has been getting crazier and crazier. You thought 2020 was bad. You thought 2016 was bad. Look at this right now. They're not hiding it anymore. We have people in government who are white nationalists, who are serving in Congress, and who are trying. And oh my gosh, don't get me started with this. This idiot wants to bring the Confederate names back to the army bases, to the forts. Again, he wants to idolize traitors and people who wanted to destroy this country. That's like saying in Germany, they wanted to name one of their military bases after all the German generals, or the Nazi generals, or even Hitler themselves, because we need to honor. They're still good generals. No. You don't celebrate traitors. You try to learn from their mistakes, but then you don't celebrate them. My best thing I learned the other day is that Hitler's unmarked grave is now in the parking lot. Like, that's a parking lot now. So I'm glad that evil is where he belongs. No sanctuary. That's why I'm so against this Confederate crap. And that's going to be another thing for next episode, because I'm going off the rails. So again, thank you for listening. It has been The Problem With. This has been the section of The Lies We Tell. Keep an eye for Saturday. Saturday's going to be my deep dive, and we're going into the American military machine and how it's funded and how it started. I'll catch you next time.